If you're learning QA automation, understanding a framework is a must. It's not just about knowing Selenium or Playwright. You need to know how to actually work within a framework that uses those tools eventually. And PyTest is one of the most popular, if not the most popular, test frameworks in Python. In this video, I'm going to show you a typical structure of a real framework built with PyTest. Basically like a wrapper for PyTest, which most companies, you don't just use those frameworks raw. You're going to create a wrapper around them with your own structure, with your own helpers, and just the way you want it. And this is one of the ways to organize it, and I'm going to show you that. And we are even going to run some tests, and those are real tests. And the code for this is in the description. You'll find the GitHub link, so you can just check it out, and you can actually run it on your machine. And if you like the structure, you can actually use it. This is a very similar structure that I use in my courses and my bootcamp and everything else. It's a professional structure. It's very efficient, and I really think it does a great job. I scale it up a little bit, so there's a lot more features in my courses, but the overall idea is pretty much the same. So the framework we're going to look at is the PyTest framework. There are a few other options, popular options, and I'll create other videos on those options as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. So it's always a good idea to look at the official page, the official documentation. You learn a lot. So if you are going to implement PyTest, and if you are going to go ahead and play with it, in addition to the framework that I'm providing you, I also do recommend you check out the website. I learned a lot by just checking out their website. Okay, so let's go back to my framework, just a little demo that I created, a little structure. First, let's even run it. So here there's a bunch of folders. We'll come back and talk about it. Under test, I have it broken up as backend and frontend. Usually I would do that. I work in a team that owns both backend applications and frontend applications, right? So my tests are split into backend and frontend, and I have some dummy scripts here. I'll get back to those. So in the backend, you have some test files. In the frontend, you have some test file. Inside of each test file, you have tests. We'll revisit those. Let's just run them right now. So to run a PyTest command, I have a virtual environment prepared. I've installed it. You have to install it. It's basically pip install PyTest. So to get started, that's what you're going to do. If you do want to follow along, you can do this. If you're familiar with Python, then go ahead and create a virtual environment. If not, you can just do pip install PyTest without a virtual environment. It is not recommended, but as a beginner, usually you don't use virtual environments anyways. So that's a topic for another time. I'll link a video about virtual environments. If you're working with Python, they're very important to understand. So you basically have a virtual environment. You just do pip install PyTest. This is going to go ahead and install the latest version of PyTest on your system. I already have it installed. Then to run a test, all tests, I'm going to do PyTest, not Python. I'm so used to saying Python. PyTest, and it depends on where you are. So I'm in the root directory, and there is a folder called tests. So I'm just going to give it the name of the folder, tests. And PyTest job is to go find them. So as it goes, we can just talk. The tests are running. There are a few tests, not that many, both backend and frontend. So one of the main reasons you want to use a framework is the framework will handle discovery. It will handle finding tests. Now think about it. All I told it is, hey, there are tests in the test folder. Go find them and execute them. And it went in the test folder. It went into subdirectories, to the backend, to the frontend directory, and ran everything past this case, and it shows you all the files that it actually executed. So that is the number one use case of a framework, as opposed to a lot of my students will ask me, like, why don't we just write Selenium script like we always do? So when you first start to learn Selenium, you write something like this. This is a Python script. You import Selenium, you open a browser, you navigate to the browser, and you do what you need to do. In this case, I'm just printing the title of that page. Now, if you just have like one test or two tests, maybe this is valid. You can just write a script like that. But if you are actually working on a project where you're going to have a lot of tests, this is not scalable, because with this, you're going to have to go and execute one file at a time. You're going to have to run one file, wait for it to finish, and run another file and things like that. You're going to have tons of files. It is not reasonable. But with PyTest, you can just write all your code. You're going to follow some rules. We're going to talk about that. You're going to write all your code following specific PyTest rules. Then all you gotta do is tell PyTest, hey, run all the tests you find in this folder. You can be specific. If I want to run just backend, I can give it PyTest tests and give it the actual folder. So it will run. So this is super quick. Run everything that is in the backend folder. There are 14 tests in the backend folder. There are 2 files, but each file has multiple tests in them. So that is running it by a folder. And usually you would do that, but normally you don't run everything at once, especially not locally. And with the point of creating a framework, the point of writing tests is not so you can run it on your laptop. You write it on your laptop, but eventually those tests are going to run in a CI/CD pipeline. The whole point of writing automation is so you can put them in a CI/CD pipeline and they test the code before it gets deployed to a certain environment, usually production, before it goes to production. So you're going to run it on a remote machine, and you're not going to run everything you have most of the time. You will create a job that's going to run just the backend. You'll create a job that's just going to run the front end, or you're going to classify tests as smoke test versus regression test, and you'll have a job that's going to run just regression test or just smoke test or something like that. So you get to specify what test you want to run a lot of different ways. My favorite way is using something called a mark in PyTest. In other frameworks, they call it a tag, but in PyTest, you call it a mark. So for example, in this case, let's say I want to run this particular test. I want to run test case ID number 10. I'm working on number 10. So I'm going to repeat the same command, right? But I'm going to add mark -m for mark, and I'm going to give it the ID. So when I hit enter now, this one particularly ran that one test. So it's telling me here, this is important to understand what it's saying here. It says 1 passed. That means 1 was executed and 13 deselected. So I found 14 of them, and I only run once. And the first thing it does is going to do the discovery. So you can see it here. Collected 14 items, 13 was deselected, 1 was selected because of the ID that I specified. And you can play with this. I'm going to create another video just specifically on this. You can tell it one or the other. You can have multiple IDs or multiple tags, or you can exclude some. There's a lot of control you have. But in this video, I just want to show you the fact that you structure it, and in the command, you can just run whatever you want. It will give you full control of exactly which tests you want to run. So this is by marker. You can run it by the test name if you want. You can run it by the file. If you want to run everything in this file, you can do that. If you want to run everything in a particular folder, we just saw that. You can do a regex like partial match. You can say I want to run every test that has the word customer in the name. There's a bunch of controls you have, and I think that's outside of the scope of this video. We'll talk about it in detail in another video. So this is pretty much what you run into. Let's say you get a job today as a QA automation, and you go to a company, and first day in the company, your job is going to be to run the existing test. And if they are using PyTest, it's going to look something like this. It's not going to be exactly like this. They might have multiple subfolders. They might not have a folder called pages. Usually they would have like a source folder. Inside of the source folder, there would be pages. And even with the test folder, it might be a team that only does front end. So you might only have a front end folder, or you might not even have a folder for the front end. So the structure would be different, but this is like a typical structure that makes it really easy to understand. So in this case, in this structure here, you got the git ignore conf-test. Conf-test is really important. It's a special file that we're going to talk about on its own video, but it is a special file that PyTest provides. And this is where we're going to write the code to open the browser. So whenever we have a test that runs a browser, for example, let's look at the front test here. We need a browser. We don't need to say open a browser. We're just going to pass in a variable, well, a parameter called browser. So that's just getting into the framework, but you only define the Selenium stuff in one place. This is the only place we import Selenium, and then it's just usable everywhere, right? That's the point of using a framework. Other than that, the way it finds tests is every test file has to start with the word test underscore, or it has to end with the word underscore test. That's how it's going to be able to find it. So when you say, hey, go, like, especially when you have just a folder, right? Just a folder, and you tell it to go run it. It's going to say, okay, I got to go in here and I got to discover tests. And it's going to keep checking every file. And as soon as it sees a file that starts with the word test underscore, or that ends with test underscore, it's going to be like, okay, this is a test file. Let me go inside and let me look for some tests. It's going to go in here. It's going to find a function that starts with the word test. In this case, the function name, we don't have the option of ending with the word test, just like the file, but starts with the word test underscore. So not even just test underscore. So as soon as it finds that, it's going to say, oh, this is a test, so let me execute it. So that's how the discovery works. Like, check out the video. I'm probably going to link it right on top of the right corner or the left corner for the video that I'm going to talk about the rules, like how to name the files, how to name the function, and you can also use a class and how to name the class. It's going to be pretty straightforward, but it's really important to understand in order to work with PyTest. Those are the rules. So we'll look at that in that video, but in this video, hopefully you get to see what a PyTest framework looks like. And it's as simple as running a command PyTest in the folder name, and here we go. Within like few seconds, we got 20 something tests running at the same time. In this case, I'm running both frontend and backend, and you can give it an option that, like, for example, you can say if you want to generate an HTML report, I can do --HTML, and you give it a folder. I'm going to say report.html. I'm going to execute this, and this now it is going to actually generate a report at the end. You get to see what has happened. That's really important with any framework, because at the end of the day, once the test runs, you want to see a general like report of what has happened. Plus, normally you develop on your laptop, but you don't run stuff on your laptop. You have hundreds of tests, and they'll run in some CI/CD, which is in the cloud. So you want to go and check after the test is finished. You want to go and look at what has happened. And the only way you can actually see exactly what happened, which test failed, which test passed, and how, is by a report. So you will generate a report. That's another huge benefit of using a framework. So the report that was generated, all I did is from the console, I took the file name, the path, and just pasted it, and this is what the report looks like. In this case, you see this is a little flaky test. It passed earlier, failed one now. That tells me I have a little flakiness in this test. As an automation engineer, my job is going to be to maintain it, to improve it so it's very reliable, it's not flaky. In this case, we know the issue is the automation because it passed 2 minutes ago and now it failed. So, but anyways, this looks like a report. This is how the report looks like. You have all the information, which passed, which failed. Even in the, I have like another like modified version where if a test fails, it will attach a screenshot of what the browser looked like when it is failing. In fact, I will put a link in the description for that video. I'm going to create a video on how to do that for PyTest. It is really important because the test is running in the cloud somewhere in CI/CD, and it failed. Then when you go look at the report, you want to know what did the page look like when the test failed. And if you have a screenshot attached, then you know, oh, that's why it failed. The button really was not there, so it failed. So it's really important that the framework you work with has a screenshot when a test actually fails. So I'll create a video on that, and make sure you give me a subscribe. So this is just a quick look at PyTest. I'm planning to create more serious, like a series of PyTest tutorials. So be on the lookout. And I have a bunch of courses. What I do is teach QA automation. I have a community. It's a very affordable monthly membership, super cheap, and a bunch of courses. You get like 11 plus courses, a community, Q&A, live calls every month, more than one call every month. Just an awesome way to learn automation. So if you're really getting into automation, check me out. All the important links will be in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.